Security guards flanked the elderly man like he was a threat, their firm grips tightening on his arms as they prepared to escort him from the Navy SEAL ceremony. "Sir, you need to come with us immediately," the lead guard ordered, his voice slicing through the formal atmosphere with cold authority. The old man didn't resist. His weathered face reflected quiet resignation as he was led toward the exit, the weight of countless untold stories hidden in his downcast eyes. Around him, hundreds of distinguished guests looked on, the silence thick with discomfort and confusion. At the podium, a young SEAL officer ready to deliver the keynote address, his mind rehearsing the words that would honor the graduating class. But as his gaze locked on the man being removed, recognition struck like a lightning bolt. His calm shattered, the carefully crafted speech forgotten. Without hesitation, he grabbed the microphone, his voice rising with fierce emotion and commanding the entire room. "Stop. That man you're removing is my father." The security team froze, caught between their orders and the undeniable truth spoken aloud. The crowd held its breath as the auditorium shifted from stunned silence to focused attention. In that suspended moment, the power of family, sacrifice, and honor filled the space, demanding recognition beyond protocol or suspicion. What followed would reveal the extraordinary journey that brought this humble man to this moment. A story of sacrifice and legacy that deserved far more than a cold dismissal. It was a lesson in respect, proving sometimes the greatest hero is the one standing quietly beside us. Welcome to Echoes of Honor, where we discover that the most important people are often the ones others try to escort away. Before we continue this powerful story about family bonds, military pride, and the courage to speak up when it matters most, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe these stories about honoring our parents and standing up for what's right deserve to be shared, please hit that subscribe button to join our growing community. Your support helps us celebrate the families behind our heroes. The annual Navy SEAL Foundation Gala at the Hotel del Coronado was San Diego's most prestigious military social event, bringing together over 800 distinguished guests, including active duty SEALs, veteran operators, senior military officials, government dignitaries, and philanthropic supporters whose contributions funded critical programs supporting the special operations community. The elegant ballroom glittered with dress uniforms, formal gowns, and the kind of sophisticated atmosphere that reflected both military tradition and civilian appreciation for special operations service. The event's guest list represented the highest levels of military and civilian society, with carefully vetted attendees whose presence honored the SEAL community while supporting fundraising efforts that provided essential services to operators and their families. Security for the gala was necessarily extensive, reflecting both the high-profile nature of many guests and the operational security requirements that protected active duty personnel whose identities and assignments remained classified. The evening's program featured a keynote address by Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, a decorated SEAL officer whose recent promotion and exceptional service record had made him one of the most respected young leaders in naval special warfare. His speech would focus on the traditions and values that connected contemporary operations to the historical foundations of special operations, emphasizing the importance of family support and community investment in maintaining operational effectiveness. Event security was managed by a professional team led by Director of Security Margaret Shun, whose responsibility extended beyond simple access control to ensuring the safety and dignity of an occasion that represented the special operations community to influential civilian supporters. Her team had been briefed extensively on the importance of maintaining appropriate protocol while accommodating the complex social dynamics that characterized high-level military events. The security team's instructions emphasized vigilance regarding potential disruptions, unauthorized access attempts, and any behavior that might compromise the event's fundraising objectives or the professional image of the SEAL community. Their procedures prioritized prevention of problems over accommodation of irregularities, reflecting the understanding that the gala's success depended on maintaining standards appropriate to its distinguished guest list. Standing near the ballroom's entrance, looking uncertain and increasingly uncomfortable, was retired Chief Petty Officer Manuel Rodriguez, though the security team had no way of knowing his identity or his profound connection to the evening's keynote speaker. At 68, Manuel carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had spent his life working with his hands. His formal attire clearly borrowed or purchased specifically for this occasion and worn with the careful attention of someone unaccustomed to such elegant social events. Manuel's presence at the gala represented a journey of both physical distance and emotional significance that had required considerable sacrifice and planning. He had traveled from his home in rural New Mexico, where he worked as a maintenance supervisor at a small manufacturing plant, using vacation time and savings that he could ill afford to attend an event that seemed worlds away from his everyday experience. What made Manuel's attendance both appropriate and complicated was his relationship to Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, the evening's featured speaker, who was his son. The relationship between father and son had been shaped by geographical separation, economic challenges, and the kind of cultural differences that can develop when military service creates opportunities that take family members far from their origins. James's military career had begun as an escape from the economic limitations of his childhood environment, but his success in special operations had created a social and professional world that seemed increasingly distant from his father's experience. The invitation to attend the gala had been extended during a brief phone conversation, delivered with the formal politeness that had gradually replaced the easy intimacy of their earlier relationship. Manuel's decision to attend represented both his pride in James's achievements and his desire to understand the military world that had shaped his son's life and values. But his unfamiliarity with the social expectations and protocol requirements of high-level military events had created anxiety about whether his presence would honor or embarrass his son's professional standing. Manuel's discomfort at the gala became increasingly evident as the evening progressed, and he struggled to navigate the complex social dynamics of an event where his working-class background and limited formal education marked him as different from the affluent civilians and sophisticated military families who comprised the majority of attendees. His attempts to engage in conversation revealed knowledge gaps about military terminology and special operations culture that made him feel increasingly out of place. The formal dinner service presented challenges that Manuel had not anticipated, as multiple courses were served with silverware and protocols that were unfamiliar to someone whose social dining experience had been limited to family gatherings and workplace functions. His careful observation of other diners and attempts to follow their example created visible anxiety that attracted attention from nearby guests. Margaret Chin's security team had been observing Manuel throughout the evening, noting his obvious discomfort, his lack of familiarity with event protocols, and his apparent disconnection from other guests who seemed to know each other through professional or social relationships. Their assessment was that he appeared to be someone who didn't belong at such a distinguished gathering. The security team's suspicions were heightened when Manuel attempted to approach the VIP reception area, where Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez was meeting with senior military officials and major donors before his keynote address. Manuel's intention was simply to greet his son and wish him well before the speech, but his movement toward the restricted area triggered security protocols designed to prevent unauthorized access to high-profile personnel. "Sir, that area is restricted to VIP guests and official personnel only," Security Officer David Walsh announced as he intercepted Manuel's approach to the reception area. "I'll need to see your credentials and verify your authorization to access that section." Manuel's explanation that he was trying to speak with his son proved inadequate for security purposes that required documentation rather than personal claims about family relationships. His inability to provide official verification of his connection to Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, combined with his obvious unfamiliarity with military protocol, created exactly the kind of situation that security teams were trained to handle with firmness and efficiency. "Sir, without proper credentials, I cannot allow you to approach the VIP reception," Walsh continued, his tone becoming more formal as he prepared to deny access to someone whose story seemed implausible given the sophisticated nature of the event and the high-profile status of the speaker being approached. Other security personnel had noticed the developing situation and moved closer to provide support if Manuel became argumentative or refused to accept the denial of access. Their presence suggested they viewed him as exactly the type of potential problem that required management through clear boundaries and appropriate escort procedures. Manuel's attempts to explain his relationship to James were hampered by his nervousness about dealing with official authority and his uncertainty about how to prove family connections that seemed obvious to him, but questionable to security personnel trained to be suspicious of unauthorized access attempts. "Please, I just want to wish my son good luck before his speech," Manuel said, his accent and working-class vocabulary marking him as different from the educated professionals who comprise the event's typical attendee profile. "James Rodriguez is my boy. I came all the way from New Mexico to hear him speak." The security team's response reflected their training to prioritize event protection over accommodation of questionable claims, especially when such claims involved access to high-profile personnel whose safety and professional image were their responsibility to protect. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to the general seating area," Walsh announced, his decision reflecting both security protocols and his assessment that Manuel's presence near the VIP reception created potential complications that were best avoided through clear boundaries. As Manuel was being escorted away from the reception area, the keynote portion of the evening's program was beginning, with Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez taking the podium to deliver the address that would serve as the gala's centerpiece and primary fundraising appeal to civilian supporters whose contributions supported SEAL community programs. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez approached the podium with the confidence and bearing that had characterized his rise through the ranks of naval special warfare. But his preparation for delivering the keynote address was interrupted by a commotion in the audience that captured his attention and triggered immediate concern about what was happening in the ballroom. From his elevated position at the podium, James could see security personnel escorting someone away from the VIP reception area, and something about the situation demanded his closer attention despite the formal requirements of beginning his scheduled presentation to the distinguished audience that had gathered to support the SEAL community. As James focused on the security situation unfolding in the audience, recognition dawned with stunning clarity as he realized that the person being escorted away by security guards was his father, Manuel, who had apparently attempted to approach the VIP area and had been identified as an unauthorized individual requiring removal from the restricted section. The sight of his father being treated as a security risk by personnel whose job was to protect the event created an immediate emotional crisis for James, who found himself torn between the professional requirements of his keynote presentation and the personal obligation to prevent his father's humiliation at an event where his presence should have been honored rather than questioned. Without regard for the disruption his action might cause to the evening's carefully planned program, James abandoned his prepared remarks and used his access to the public address system to address the security situation that was affecting his father. "Excuse me," James said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the ballroom and immediately commanding attention from the 800 guests who had been settling in to listen to his keynote address. "I need to interrupt the program for a moment to address something important." The unusual nature of James's deviation from the scheduled presentation created immediate confusion among event organizers and concern among guests who wondered what kind of emergency or significant development required such unprecedented interruption of the gala's formal proceedings. "The gentleman being escorted by security is my father, Manuel Rodriguez," James announced, his voice carrying both pride and determination as he publicly claimed the man who had been identified as an unauthorized attendee requiring removal from the event. The transformation in the ballroom's atmosphere was immediate and dramatic as guests processed the significance of what they were hearing, that the evening's keynote speaker was publicly identifying the man being removed by security as his father, someone whose presence at the gala was not only appropriate, but essential to honoring the family foundations that had contributed to James's military success. "My father traveled from New Mexico to attend this event and support the SEAL community," James continued, his explanation providing context that helped the audience understand both the appropriateness of Manuel's attendance and the injustice of his treatment by security personnel who had failed to recognize his significance. Margaret Chun immediately signaled her security team to halt their escort of Manuel, understanding that the situation had been fundamentally transformed by the keynote speaker's public recognition of the man they had been removing as an unauthorized attendee. James stepped down from the podium and walked directly toward his father, creating a moment of reunion that was witnessed by hundreds of distinguished guests who understood that they were observing something far more significant than a routine family acknowledgement at a military social event. "Dad, I'm sorry about the confusion," James said as he embraced Manuel in front of the entire audience. His gesture demonstrating both his love for his father and his determination to ensure that appropriate respect was shown to someone whose support had contributed to his military achievements. Manuel's response reflected both his pride in James's success and his understanding that his son's public recognition had transformed what could have been a humiliating experience into a moment of honor that validated his decision to attend the gala despite his discomfort with its sophisticated social environment. The reunion between James and Manuel Rodriguez became the emotional centerpiece of the gala, transforming what might have been a routine fundraising speech into a powerful demonstration of the family bonds that support military service and the importance of honoring the parents whose sacrifices enable their children's achievements. James's decision to abandon his prepared keynote address in favor of honoring his father created an opportunity for the audience to understand the personal foundations that had contributed to his military success and the values that had shaped his approach to leadership and service. "Ladies and gentlemen, I had prepared remarks about tradition and values in naval special warfare," James announced as he returned to the podium with Manuel beside him. "But my father's presence here tonight provides a better example of those values than any speech I could deliver." The impromptu presentation that followed became more meaningful than any prepared address could have been, as James used his father's attendance as an opportunity to discuss the family sacrifices that support military careers and the importance of honoring the people whose influence shapes military personnel throughout their development. "My father worked 2 jobs throughout my childhood to provide opportunities that he never had," James continued, his words connecting Manuel's sacrifices to his own military achievements while educating the audience about the family foundations that enable military success. The spontaneous applause that erupted from the audience reflected their understanding that they were witnessing something authentic and meaningful, the recognition of family support that often goes unacknowledged at military events focused primarily on professional achievements. Margaret Shun approached Manuel after James's presentation to apologize personally for the security confusion and to express her gratitude for the education she had received about the importance of family relationships at military events. Her experience had taught her that security procedures must be balanced against recognition of the family connections that give meaning to military service. The VIP reception that Manuel had been denied access to was transformed into an opportunity for him to meet other military families and civilian supporters who were interested in learning about his experience as the father of a distinguished SEAL officer. His conversations revealed both his pride in James's achievements and his own contributions to the values that had shaped his son's character. The gala's fundraising objectives were enhanced rather than compromised by James's recognition of his father, as donors responded positively to the authentic demonstration of family values that had been provided by the evening's unexpected focus on parent-child relationships in military families. James's keynote address, though different from what had been planned, became one of the most memorable presentations in the gala's history, demonstrating that the most powerful military speeches sometimes emerge from authentic moments rather than prepared remarks. The security protocols that had nearly resulted in Manuel's removal were revised based on the evening's experience, with new procedures designed to accommodate family members whose presence at military events might not be immediately obvious to security personnel unfamiliar with the diverse backgrounds represented in military families. Manuel's attendance at the gala provided him with new understanding of his son's military world and the community that valued James's service and leadership. His presence had validated James's achievements while demonstrating the family foundations that had contributed to his success. The formal attire that had made Manuel feel uncomfortable became less important than the recognition he received from military and civilian guests who understood that his sacrifices had contributed to the development of one of naval special warfare's most promising leaders. In the months following the gala, James made efforts to maintain closer contact with his father and to ensure that Manuel felt included in the military community that valued his son's service. Their relationship was strengthened by the shared experience of the gala and Manuel's understanding of the respect that James had earned through his military career. The podium that James had used to recognize his father became a symbol of the courage required to prioritize family relationships over professional protocol, and the importance of ensuring that the people who shape our success receive appropriate recognition regardless of their social or economic status. The microphone that had been intended for a standard keynote address was transformed into an instrument for honoring family sacrifice and demonstrating the values that define authentic military leadership. James's use of his platform to recognize his father had shown that true leaders understand their obligations to the people who made their success possible. The ballroom that had witnessed Manuel's near removal became the setting for one of the most meaningful demonstrations of family honor in military history, showing that the most important moments at distinguished events sometimes involve recognizing the people who seem least likely to belong, but who actually deserve the highest respect. Sometimes the most powerful speeches at military events are not the ones that were prepared in advance, but the ones that emerge when leaders recognize their obligations to honor the family members whose sacrifices made their achievements possible. James Rodriguez had been scheduled to deliver a keynote about military values, but his most important lesson had been delivered when he abandoned his prepared remarks to ensure that his father received the respect he deserved. The security team that had been prepared to remove Manuel learned that military events serve purposes beyond protocol enforcement, and that the most important attendees are sometimes those whose presence might not be immediately obvious, but whose contributions to military success deserve recognition and accommodation. This story was brought to you by Echoes of Honor. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Someone whose sacrifices enabled your achievements, but who might have seemed out of place in the sophisticated environments where your success was celebrated? Tell us in the comments about the family members who supported your journey despite not fitting the typical profile of your professional community, and how their example has influenced your values and priorities. And if you think stories like these about honoring our parents and family foundations deserve to be shared, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one.